So now we have some pre-boarded matches out of the way. Run me down what your sideboard is, what cards do, and basically what matchups they're in for.
Yeah. So it starts with 3 Surgical Extractions. He's obviously coming against your graveyard decks, and sometimes your Storm combo decks, especially against Ant. You got your Chokes against your slow blue decks, usually Miracles or a Blade variant. Sometimes you can bring it against like a High Tide deck.
Are you bringing in these Chokes versus like sort of more aggro or tempo Delver decks?
I find like a lot of the tempo Delver decks get ahead on board really fast, so you have to really answer the board, and you can't really play the Chokes. They can also just daze to replay their lands, and it's a little bit awkward. I think there's not enough sideboard. There's not enough stuff to cut from the main deck to justify their inclusion.
What about some of the faster blue combo decks like Show and Tell or Reanimator?
I think they're also a bit too fast because this doesn't come down any earlier than turn 2, and often they are already able to go off by then.
Okay.
But it's nice against the slow decks, and those still make a pretty significant portion of the meta.
All right. Go on.
We also got our Zealous Persecutions. These are great, mostly for Young Pyromancer and True Name Nemesis. These are pretty popular creatures right now, but also, as you may know, Death and Taxes and Maverick traditionally have a little bit of problem with elves, so this helps shore up the matchup a little bit there as well.
So when you're boarding in the additional removal spells, in general, what cards are you taking out?
For grindy decks that have a lot of creatures, I often like taking out a Batter Skull or maybe a off-color sword. Often those decks, other than elves, are not particularly vulnerable to Gaddock Teeg, so those come out as well.
Okay.
So just stuff like that.
All right, great.
Let's got our 3rd Gaddock Teeg here. That's to shore up the Miracles matchup a little bit more, as well as elves and Storm combo. You got 3 Canonists. They're great against Omniscient Space combo. Anything High Tide, Storm, Elves, again, is a tough matchup. They shore up a lot of things, and I think this is quite strong. I'm even considering bringing in some of the blue-red decks. You can protect with the Mother of Ruins, but that might be a little bit loose.
Okay. And then I think this is really interesting. Night of the Reilquary, not suitable for the main deck, but you're bringing in 3 from the board.
Yeah, it's a bit of a change. Maverick, the user who developed this list, swears by 3 main deck knights, which is a staple in all these green-white decks. I find that I want to play this more as a Death and Taxes deck game 1, so taking it up to 3, especially without Flicker Wisp to reset it, is a bit awkward. But often, because a lot of Golgari Charm, Dreaded Knight type effects come in post-board, it makes sense to bring these in. These are great against decks that where you want to out-mid-range them. It's also good against something like Sneak Attack. Traditionally, Death and Taxes has 3 Karakases to make Show and Tell awkward for them. Well, here we got only 1 Karakas and 3 Weathered Wayfarers to find it, but those don't always turn on. But when you add these 3 Knights, it gives you a little bit of the boost you need to overcome those matchups. So sometimes these come in. And certainly against a deck like Blue-Red Delver, where these Monastery Swift Spears can out-aggro you, having a Knight is very nice to just stonewall them and prevent them from proceeding with their offensive.
Kind of just plays like the Tarmogoyf role in that matchup, just be like a big dumb idiot to block.
Yeah, I mean, it's also got some utility, especially with Scryb Ranger. And,
okay.
They can't bolt hit it, so if you eventually strap a Jitte to it, you could pretty much end the game there.
Okay. Cool. All right, well, let's see it.
All right, great. So we're assuming that I won the pre-board games, and I'm considering what I want to board in.
Seems pretty likely, right?
This is a pretty favorable matchup pre-board, so what we got to bring in, this is not really good. Choke seems good on the surface, but actually against Temple deck, especially on the draw, I don't really like it. They also run Abrupt Decay, plenty of Bayous, and your own Deathrites.
That being said, I think that Bug Delver Postboard is more of a control deck. Like, it does have tempo elements, but you're probably not going to lose to a Delver so much as just like them controlling the game and then beating down with the Tarmogoyf.
Okay, that's interesting.
I also imagine that if he saw Vial and Teeg in both the game 1s, he's likely to take out Force with well.
Yeah, as a Bug Delver player, against fair decks, it's really common to cut all the counter magic.
Yeah, that's something I'd consider. It's a bit awkward against Daze too on the draw because it buys them new blue mana, resets in case they have Abrupt Decay or something. I'll keep that in mind. Canonist probably isn't particularly good. It's funny with Mother of Runes, they could never remove anything anymore, but that's a bit Fantasyland.
Don't they just
well, I guess
like try to remove it on your turn? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if I have a Scryb Ranger or a second one, that would be great. But it's a bit ambitious. The Teeg is a consideration. I don't really like Teeg because I anticipate they'll probably board out some number of Force of Wills and maybe even Treasure Cruise, although I think the latter is less likely. This is the third Teeg. I have 2 in the main. And then I also have 3 Neither Reliquaries. This is unusual and it's in my sideboard. Now I expect a lot of Massacre type effects, maybe not necessarily that card, but if not Massacre, Golgari Charm, Dread of Night, Engineered Plague. So having a big fatty is a bit of a hedge in games 2 and 3 post board. So it's a card that I would likely want to bring in. Now the cards that I most likely want to cut, Weathered Wayfarer is certainly too good on the draw. Pridemage is a card I'd keep if I don't see like Pithing Needle or No Rod, because I depend very heavily on my vials and my equipment cards. Those are definitely things I'd consider cutting. And then there's also Gaddock Teeg. Once again, that's I'd keep this if I see Massacre, but I'd keep this if I see Pithing Needle or No Rod post board. Maybe Engineered Plague as well.
Do you consider cutting any equipment?
Yeah, I've often considered cutting equipment. I think sort of Fire and Ice is the worst in this one. Mm-hmm. Batterskull isn't the... I feel like Batterskull's unlikely to win me situations where I wouldn't have won already. So it's a card I consider cutting, but I think game 2, before I know what he brings in, it's worth keeping it in. Unless I want to bring in Choke.
As a Bug Delver player, like Batterskull is by far the hardest card to deal with because it can't be decayed, and it just makes a creature.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'll keep it. Greg's advice on the matchup is based on a lot of experience, and he's had quite a bit of success with it, so I'll listen to him here.
What about the second Gaddock Teeg in your main deck?
Yeah, I'm trying to decide whether I value that more than the Pridemage or not. Certainly 3 Knights are coming in. The Choke is a consideration, so plus 3 cards in, Sword of Fire and Ice out. And I'm considering shaving the second Teeg and the third Pridemage.
It seems like the most likely thing that you'll stop with Gaddock Teeg is Treasure Cruise.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think I'd rather just have the instant win potential of Choke, but maybe not. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
At least Gaddock Teeg beats down.
Okay. I think the Teeg... It's also a hedge against Massacre. I don't know how common it is. Greg, don't tell me. We're actually playing with his deck, so he knows exact contents of that list. I think having 1 copy is nice because I never have to draw a redundant copy. And then if I don't see anything that threatens me game 3, I'll probably keep this out completely. And then the Choke, you're very hard to win through a Choke.
It definitely buys time. It can be very good. If you can keep Deathrite off the table, it's really hard for Choke to be answered. And you already put so much pressure on Abrupt Decay that they have to have an Abrupt Decay really quickly. Okay. They can't cantrip into it.
One thing I'm concerned about is I'd like to curve turn 2 Thalia to turn 3 something, and Choke is not on curve.
Mm-hmm.
I also have no way to remove this from the game if it gets decayed, and the most likely ways I lose are Mana Screw, Goyf beating me down, or Liliana just locking me out.
Yeah.
You think at least 1 copy should go in?
It's certainly better on the play. On the draw, I can definitely see a case for not bringing it in at all.
Okay. So for this game 3, we're going to assume that this is a game 2 a normal match where I've won game 1. I'm going to be on the draw. I'm going to take out the Fire and Ice, 1 copy of each of these green-white creatures, just because I don't know what I want to hedge against for this post-board games, and leave the Choke out, but probably consider bringing that in if there's another game where I'm on the play post-board.
I think one thing that we haven't talked about that's pretty interesting is Zealous Persecution.
Yes.
Normally Zealous Persecution is like pretty insane against the Delver decks. Certainly against Blue-Red, you bring it in a heartbeat. Blue-White-Red is pretty dependent on True Name to actually win, and you have very few answers to True Name. So it definitely comes in against them. Bug Delver often has Golgari Charm, so it's much worse against them. But are you concerned about True Names either in the board or in the main?
I'm very concerned about True Name, especially with this configuration. Boarding out Fire and Ice being my best out, in addition to not having Zealous Persecution. I don't think most Bug Delver lists run True Name anymore. If they do, they probably run like Marsh Casualties instead of Golgari Charm. I'm going to hedge against not seeing True Name right here. And if I see a True Name and get wrecked with it, I will learn my lesson and board accordingly for the next few games.
Okay.